And we're back. All right, welcome back, everybody. Thank you again for watching. Today we're going to do another complete set presentation. This is a set that I completed back in 2007, 2008. I was doing this set and also the 1971 top set at the same time on a very different budget than what I have now. So I do have some cards in here that at some point I want to be able to upgrade. But I'm very happy to today, this is kind of a nod to Mike the baseball collector, who I know is working on this project. I wanted to throw out there the 1970 Topps baseball complete set. So without further ado, let's kind of jump into it, and I'll talk a little bit about the set itself and also the 1970 Topps season. So this was the first year. I'll open up the first page or binder and kind of show the first page. This was the first year that Topps increased the price of a wax pack since 1952. It went from 5 cents to 10 cents. So double in price. Can you imagine how kids reacted at that point when they had to pay double the amount to get baseball cards, and it was still just a dime? Very different from this day and age where we have boxes that are thousands and thousands of dollars a piece to get the hits and things like that. So a very different time, very different way of collecting. But that was one of the first things that kind of changed. It was also a year they first went over 700 cards for a set. The set consists of 720 cards over 7 series, so it was still released in series. That a few more years where they were still releasing in series. The high series in this one are not as bad as some of the other sets you can collect in the 1960s and even parts of the early 70s. So it's actually pretty easy to be able to put this set together. This is also noted for the only set in the 70s that does not have a Hall of Fame rookie card. Although there is a very big rookie card in here that we'll get to in a moment that I'll point out when we get to that individual in the set. Other things about the set, they had inserts with this set that came within the wax packs and probably cello packs as well and things like that. These were, if you've done the heritage products, you've kind of noticed and seen some of these items available when you get heritage products. I think that's one of the fun parts of heritage products. So they had little booklets of players. So they did a little description of the Willie Mays story or the J. Johnstone story. They had 24 of those that were in packs that you could have pulled. They had little posters. They had 24 different posters you could have pulled. So you could have gotten a Ron Santo or you could have gotten a Denny McLain. They had all the stars of the day too. So I'm just kind of being facetious with some of them on there. And then they had a little scratch-off checklist. I think these were team checklists that you could get of individual players. And they had most of the stars of the day. So for my team, Luis Aparicio was the guy that was represented there. And also wanted to point out that this was the first year of sort of the Topps super cards. Even though they had a test product in 1969, it wasn't widely distributed or released. In fact, it may not have been released at all, but there's cards available for purchase if you want to be able to get those. So this is the first year they did those. They were not box toppers like in hobby boxes that you see now. I did have somebody ask me that question. These are sold in separate packs. So we can talk about those in another time. So the 1970 Topps cards have silver borders on here. Some people consider them gray. That's also one of the, maybe in some people's opinions, a design flaw. I think I actually kind of like the gray borders personally. It's also the last set where they don't have action photography in there except for some of the World Series and playoff cards. So 1971 is when they started introducing some of the action shots into the cards. And they have a back of the card that looks very similar to this, where they have like this yellow and blue. If you get cards that are in still really good shape, the white's still really white and the colors are really bright, but the aging on here really has dulled them. So they kind of look kind of dirty and dingy over time, but you'll see a kind of a mixture of these cards in here because some actually stayed in really good shape and you could see the backs of them. So without further ado, let's start kind of looking at this set here. The first thing you'll kind of notice here is the Mets World Championship card. This was the year of the Miracle Mets in 1969, so they were given the very first card in the set to kind of honor their World Series championship, which is pretty cool because it's got like Tom Seaver and Nolan Ryan pictured in the picture itself. That's kind of a collectible card within itself because Mets fans really love the 1969 Mets team, so they want to be able to get that card. So that one kind of stands out there. Also, there's a lot of Seattle Pilot cards. So there is not 2 years of Seattle Pilots if you go by Topps. They had them in 69. That was the year they actually were in Seattle, and they have them here in 1970. The Pilots didn't become the Brewers until really early on, I think, into the 1970, early at some point in 1970, but probably after, when they were able to do photography and also the print runs. So Topps just went with the Pilots in here. One of the things you also notice with this set, even though you also saw it in 69, is some of the expansion teams start having cards in here. So they kind of are another little thing you can kind of get a chance and see as you go through here. So just keep in mind the Pilots are actually the Brewers by the point in this season. So let's talk a little bit about the 1970 baseball season as I start pointing out some Hall of Famers. You can see the backs of the cards have the obviously traditional sort of cartoons that you see with these that give you a little interesting fact about the player, maybe about the team that the player plays for. So they're still very much in play here in 1970. Carl Strimsky is the first Hall of Famer. He appears in the set, card number 10, right up here in the corner. Down here, you also have Hoyt Wilhelm with the Braves. I think he has a different team for every card in his last few years as a player, because he got bounced around a lot. Some other names that kind of stand out as I kind of look through here is like Larry Dierker. Obviously was a decent pitcher during his time, but also was a manager for a little while as well, during my time when I was a young adult. The Expos, this is the second season of the Expos. You see their cards here, and you'll see Padre cards as well. Gene Tennis and Vida Blue have their rookie cards in here. But they are not Hall of Famers. So I mentioned there is not a Hall of Fame rookie in this set, which also makes it kind of easy to be able to collect. So you don't have a really super duper expensive card in this set. Although there is one in the last series that is going to cost you a little bit more. Dick Allen, who I think should be in the Hall of Fame, and I think I mentioned that every time he comes up in here. Davey Johnson, maybe at some point we'll get in there as a manager. The 1970 season. So this year the Baltimore Orioles actually knocked off the Cincinnati Reds. So it was the first year the Big Red Machine getting to the World Series, even though they didn't win. And the Orioles were just a juggernaut during this time period. So even though they lost to 69, they came right back and won in 1970. Some other teams that made the playoffs during this time, because we had divisional play by then, is the AL runner-up was the Minnesota Twins. So they were able to get into the playoffs again. They had really good teams that just couldn't get over the hump, get back to the World Series after they were in the World Series in the early 60s, or mid-60s. And then the Pittsburgh Pirates, who eventually won the World Series a year later in 1971. See the league leaders. Again, I think I mentioned this in previous videos, but it's a good way to get a card with multiple Hall of Famers on it. So you can see this one's got Clemente with Pete Rose. I mean, where else are you going to get cards that have both of those guys on it? I know Rose is not a Hall of Famer, but he should be in there in my opinion. But here's like a great one for a Twins collector. You got Carew and Oliva. Here's one of all three Hall of Famers. And like I said, I collected on a budget then, so we have some cards that definitely need to be replaced. Like this one is totally miscut. Hank Aaron still appeared a lot of league leader cards during this time frame, even though he was at the end of his career. At this point, Willie Mays was starting to wind down a little bit, so he doesn't appear on some of the league leader cards. Here's a cool one, which you got 4 Hall of Famers listed on here for league leaders, for pitching leaders. You have 3 for ERA. All right, Jim Cott up in the corner, newly minted Hall of Famer. Let's add in the set here. I really like the old cards. I like the close-up photos. I know they're all staged photos for the most part, but I really like that about it. That's also why I like Heritage, for that very reason as well. See modern players with sort of those close-up photos. All right, who won the MVP awards this season? All right, well, let me get those information for you. The season MVPs were actually one player from the Orioles and then one player from Cincinnati. They both were represented in the World Series that year. So you'd think I might be talking about like Brooks Robinson or Frank Robinson or Jim Palmer even, but it was Boog Powell. Boog Powell was the MVP in 1970, and also Johnny Bench was the MVP in 1970 for the Cincinnati Reds. And he's got a really cool card that I'll point out when we come up to it. My poor White Sox did not have a good year that year. They were dead last in the AL West and only won a measly 56 games that year. The other side of the town did a little bit better. They were second place in the NL East. My checklists all have cards marked off, so I need to replace those with clean checklists at some point. Fortunately, they're not going to be super expensive checklists for these. Reggie Jackson, his second year card is listed in here. It's a nice one to pick up if you can't afford his rookie. You get it at a pretty affordable price. The only thing that's going to kind of knock it down is because of the gray card. The gray borders do show the wear more than the white ones would for his rookie card. But it's a really cool image because it's in the background is in Yankee Stadium before it had its modifications in the 1970s. Earl Weaver, Hall of Fame manager. Harmon Killebrew, Hall of Fame first baseman. One of my better looking cards in this set. It's one of the last ones I think I added to. I just happen to need him forever. When you guys get a chance, read up on the Pilots because their story is just a classic tale of what not to do to start up a baseball team. It's comical, some of the things that were happening for them. You'll notice the Senators are still around at this point. It's before they moved to Texas to become the Rangers. Phil Niekro down on the bottom. This was one of the first, actually, 1970 Topps cards I got outside of the Hank Aaron card, which comes up later in the set. Al Oliver is over here, not a Hall of Famer, but I think he should be considered personally at some point. Billy Williams down at the bottom. Tommy John, I think, definitely should be considered for the Hall of Fame in future at some point. Sparky Anderson up here in the corner, Hall of Fame manager. And here we arrive upon the big rookie that is not in the Hall of Fame, but it's a big card for the set. The Thurman Munson card, it's a dual, obviously, rookie card. His 1971 Topps card in better condition is going to far outsell the 1970 Topps card in good condition for, I think, two reasons. Actually, three reasons. One, it's the first card he appears just by himself. Second, it's a really cool action image. And third, those black borders. If you can find a really good black bordered 1971 Topps Thurman Munson in a high grade, it's going to far outsell probably the rookie card of Thurman Munson, unless maybe it's like a PSA 10. I haven't ever looked at the pop report for this card to see how many of those may exist in, at this point through PSA, but it's just something to kind of keep in mind. So you actually could probably get his rookie card at a better price. And at some point, I hope Thurman Munson is reconsidered for by the Veterans Committee for the Hall of Fame. He definitely was one of the two big catchers in the 1970s. I think he had to put maybe Fisk would be a third, but I think he'd probably go Bench, Munson, Fisk for the 1970s. Joe Torre up here in the corner. My father's St. Louis Cardinals. The Cardinals were not so good. In 1970, they only won 76 games and finished 13 games out of first place. Charlie Manuel, later on, manager. And you see the World Series cards do have action photos. They're not colorized, which you'll see, I believe by 1971, they start adding color photos. But here's an opportunity to get Other additional cards by Tom Seaver and also Nolan Ryan. And this picture actually has Nolan Ryan picture right there. Such a young little guy at that point. Okay, and these are the League Championship Series. So we do see World Series cards coming up later too. Ted Williams. This is a card I'd love to get because I couldn't afford Ted Williams cards for the longest time. So I had to go with the managers to get his cards. Actually kind of like began to lend itself to me actually looking at building sets was by getting some players like that as managers. Juan Marichal up here in the corner. Let me speed this up a little bit because I think we're already kind of getting a long video. We have Steve Carlton, Hall of Fame pitcher. Brooks Robinson right here in the middle. I believe was the World Series MVP, if I'm not mistaken. When they won the World Series. Yes, he was. The human vacuum was on full display for everybody to see during that World Series. Fergie Jenkins down here in the corner. Walt Alston, Hall of Fame manager for the Dodgers. Willie McCovey, definitely one on the list to replace for me at some point and upgrade. I just think these cards look awesome when they're in good shape, personally. I think the gray somehow looks like a bright silver to me when they're in really good shape. And when they're not, they look kind of gray and beat up. 1970 was the very first vintage card I got. And that's also was like, at some point I want to be able to complete that set. And it was a Hank Aaron too. I think I told that story how I was given that card. Speaking of Hank, here's his brother Tommy. Bill's baseball lead right next to him. Bill Buckner rookie card. Rod Carew right here at the top next to Leo DeRocher. Two Hall of Fame inductees, one as a manager and then one obviously as a second baseman. Talked about Carew a lot recently because I got his rookie card to finish 67. And here we got the World Series down here at the bottom. Tom Seaver up here in the corner. What a talent he was during that time frame. Luis Aparicio down the bottom. The only Hall of Fame White Sox player in this set. Lou Piniella, that is by far not his rookie card. He was featured on so many different rookie cards, like a dual rookie card going back as far as 64. So if he ever gets in, you're gonna have to go much further back to get his rookie card. But something to kind of point out, at some point he might be a Hall of Fame manager. Lou Brock. It was kind of fun when I was like building these cards, building the set, I would just buy lots. And somehow I always would have like a Lou Brock in there. So I had like probably 10 Lou Brocks at some point in there. So I just picked the best condition one I could get. Red Shandy's Hall of Fame manager. Some of these cards have these little weird imperfections. I don't know if you can kind of see that there. There was something in the printing process. So it's not any damage that happened to the card post-production. It happened during the production process. And this is one of my favorite Clemente Photos. I love that card. This was taken, I believe, at Shea Stadium, if I'm not mistaken. Still around and playing by that point. Tony Perez, right here at the top. This has probably been in the binder now for going on 15 years. It was fun putting these together when I could. I was really excited when I finished. I think I finished 70 before 71. But it was fun finishing those two sets together. And I think I finished those after I finished 72. Gil Hodges, finally in the Hall of Fame. Denny McClain, not a Hall of Famer, but more infamous Denny McClain than anything else. Jim Bunning down here in the corner. Hall of Fame player and statesman. Barry Bonds' father, Bobby Bonds. Second year card. Bill Mazeroski down here at the bottom, the hero of the 1960 World Series. Okay, now we're coming up on the All-Star cards. Got Jim Palmer right before then, but these look a lot like the 1961 All-Star cards for sure. You can easily probably get those confused. I think Topps got a little lazy when they did the All-Star cards for 1970, and I'll admit that. But again, opportunity to get more Hall of Famers is never a bad thing. Rod Carew, Ron Santo, Brooks Robinson, Pete Rose, who I've already talked about, should be in there. Another Reggie Jackson. Strimsky, Hank Aaron, Frank Robinson, Johnny Bench, Juan Marichal. That's the fun part, right? On the backs, you got like pictures, comic book pictures of them on there, which is kind of fun. I think I like the backs of the cards more than I like the fronts of the cards. Pop Stargell right here at the top. That's a nice looking card of him. How are we all doing out there, hanging in there? Appreciate you watching this long if you did. You're definitely a vintage set collector if you've watched this long. And I'd like to take my time and show this because some people like to look at these because they're thinking about building the set. And this is an opportunity to do it. Hank Aaron, the very first vintage card I got. And the first one for this set, obviously, by default. Tony Oliva. Bob Gibson. My dad got me that card when I was a kid too, so that is included in the set. Joe Morgan. Before he became a Red, he had a couple more seasons as an Astro. We're getting into the 6th series here. We're down to the last two. Ken the Hawk Harrelson, Hall of Fame broadcaster. For your Chicago White Sox. Orlando Cepeda. Gaylord Perry at the top here. Jim Hunter down at the bottom, also known as Catfish. So we got some cool cards coming up here for sure. Pete Rose, beautiful Pete Rose card here. Ooh, 7th series. We're getting near the back. Willie Mays. Beautiful card. Beautiful image of him. I remember I was so excited when I picked that card up. I picked it up like right before Thanksgiving as a gift to myself because I got my first job post-graduation from graduate school. And I was working on this set at the time. First job in the field, I should say, was working, but. Don Sutton. Ernie Banks down here in the corner. Second to last card for him. Al Kaline. I love that Al Kaline. One of my favorite cards of his. As you see, I do love this set. I know I'm in the minority of this one. Johnny Bench. The first three Johnny Bench cards are like classic. This is his third year card. It's in a high series, so it's going to be a little bit more expensive than if it were in the low series, so it also makes it kind of stand out a little bit too. MVP that season, as we mentioned earlier, Ron Santo. Now we're in the high series, so these are going to be a little more expensive. I remember trying to spend a lot of time putting these together, and I had spent a little bit more on some of these higher series cards to do it. Did a lot of set breaks to be able to kind of get those in bulk. I think from Greg Moore's Cards, actually, who's still a good resource for those things. Frank Robinson down here in the corner. Get to the very end of the set. All right, the last page is coming up here. And then probably, debatably, maybe the most expensive card in the set, and that's a third-year Nolan Ryan, which is my favorite Nolan Ryan card while he's a Met. More so than 69 and 68 or 71. I just like the image. It's a high series card, so it's a little bit more expensive. Although you can't really find a cheap high condition Nolan Ryan in those 4 years. So you're going to be paying a lot no matter what. But I just love the cards when he was with the Mets personally. The Pilots card actually goes for a little bit too, just because it's in the high series. And that's it. I do have one other page, and it's and Heritage did buyback cards where they bought the couple sets and then they actually just stamped them for 50th anniversary. So I got a few of those. I was actually building the Heritage set that year. So I got 3 of those in the hobby boxes I opened. So I just added them in the back here with that 50th anniversary stamp. But I hope you enjoyed the 1970 Topps set. Keep collecting out there. If you're working on it, feel free to send me some questions if you have any questions about set building. Have a good night.